really talking about COVID, so to say. We are not talking about मर गए, बुरे हालत होगी. It's all understood. We just want to say how is it going forward for you and for the industry at large. Mr. Chopra.
So good evening. I actually quite enjoyed the discussion before this. Some very good thoughts, and I thought some very, very good ideas, and all of them are very good friends, and I think thought leaders in what they're trying to do. So the way that I look at it is it's not about luxury. I think it's with COVID or whatever happened in the last 1 year, it's about location. So really dependent upon which location were you operating in, and then what is it that you want to do with that location. So Goa, we are having a dream run. I don't know how we're going to do the numbers that we've done this year, next year. It's absolutely unreal. I have no qualms in saying it. Our operating profit is 67% at the postcard hotels in Goa. So means how do you get better than 67%? You can't. But Sri Lanka, the country is closed. There's hardly any occupancy. The hotel is as close to just not even breaking even right now. Bhutan, the country is closed, but it has enough internal business. So our entire story in Bhutan has just slowed down, in my opinion. So our aim when we opened the postcard Deva in Bhutan was to do $1,000. We started opening with $1,000 first 3 months. COVID happened, but otherwise our game was that by the end of this year we should have overtaken, gone ahead of the Aman. But the Aman is closed. The Six Senses is closed. We are the only guys who are open. So it's a different market, but the hotel is so your whole perspective then in a scenario like this turns to profitability in markets like Bhutan, which have a 21-day quarantine. Goa is off the rocker charts, but so are so many other domestic destinations. From our perspective, see, Naveen, when I wanted to launch a brand, so my thing was not that, I'll quit a great job at Oberoi and then take another job somewhere. My thing was that we need to be creating, and it's not for whether it's Easy Diner or whether it's Postcard, it's always to challenge the current operating norms and how do we make our business elastic. There's a beautiful point by one of the panelists that one of the biggest things they realized was that there could be so much elasticity of rates in city hotels. I don't know who said it, but this was a very nice point. So our point is how much elasticity can be there in terms of thought leadership. Yeah, so how do we, yeah, whatever you may call it. But our point was how do we really, no, agility is not the word, because agility is you kind of, we're playing in the same arena. Our thing is how do we go out of the hall really, yeah, and kind of create a new narrative. So when we started this, we built for India first, and we built small. We said small is the new luxury, small is big, that's the big line, that's my opening launch line, you attended the press conference. And the second thing was we're going to build for India first. Now, COVID has just accelerated. Small is really big when it's COVID because you don't want to go for breakfast with 200 people. And the second part was because we built for India first, we got lucky. But our vision stays. I just think our journeys got accelerated. So if it would have taken the top CEOs in this country or celebrities in this country to know about the postcard in 2024, now they know about the postcard in 2020. Our journey has just been accelerated. Our development pipeline's been accelerated. But even if COVID wouldn't have happened, we were on this journey. So we were very clear that the future of hospitality, in our opinion, and we may be totally wrong and off the mark, is small, ultra-immersive, high-end luxury. That's the way we saw it. We are fortunate that we started with a very robust market, and that market is just going off the charts.
Shobha, say you are managing the pulse of, 30, 35?
No, sir, about 100.
About 100, oh my God, so sorry, my apologies. About 100 curated properties.
Yeah.
So where do you see, and they are all very experiential, and they're very unique in themselves, where do you see the business side for them going forward?
So, thank you so much. This is my first live event, and I was a little bit nervous, but I think this is the norm. This is how you sit, like you'd sit in classrooms, right? So spaced away. So I agree with what Kapil said, that from the beginning, we've always endorsed small hotels. So it's the size of the hotel. It is also its proximity to a feeder destination. That's worked. So I can't say all the 100 hotels are doing very well. Though the other things, the other elements like being on large estates, having very few keys, being separated by large distances from the next villa or a cottage, having the owners involved in all the in all the operation, including the safety and security. A trust, they said, was the latest currency, was the new currency during the pandemic. And to know that you're going to Mr. Rathor's home rather than going to an XYZ hotel, worked very well. So they would say, चलो हम रणशेर के पास चलते हैं, चलो हम रवि रामत्रा के पास, रवि राजपाल के पास चलते हैं. So trust became a very big point. At the same time, if the experiences uh, were not aligned with the Indian or the Indian traveler's sense of a holiday, it didn't work. So though it could be luxury, it could be, so some of our hotels which were off the beaten track were very immersive, did not have the footprint of large destinations, are still struggling, right? And they didn't have the framework of the usual luxury that that you can easily code and say, yeah, that is luxury. Huge rooms, great views, lake view or sea view or whatever. In the absence of that kind of a thing, luxury, the numbers didn't add up. However, we took this as an opportunity to say that luxury need not necessarily be about excesses. Luxury can be about that farm to table concepts. It could be that you are contributing to a certain economy of the destination. You're also a contributory factor in the pristine quality of a destination. You're also a contributory element in preserving a wildlife, a wildlife destination, or contributing to the conservation of the tiger or something like that. So we started infusing this as an element to start exploring differently. A very interesting thing happened during the pandemic, in the sense most of our hotels, and this is a call out to everybody in the inbound segment, that most of the hotels are completely tuned to the inbound market. Ki gore chahiye, gore chahiye, gore chahiye. In the absence of the goras not coming, and once they discovered that it's not a 1 month, 2 month, 3 month thing, this is going to go on for some time, they quickly turned their offerings around to say, Indian guests, welcome, but here, this is who we are, right? We are not your typical luxury hotel. Please don't confuse us with, the classic example, we've been promoting Karan Mahal in Srinagar, and they constantly keep saying, we are not a Taj, we are not a this thing, this is a boutique, experiential, heritage hotel. Please don't expect to be. So that kind of narratives has started to come in, and which I think is very, very important when you're looking at a heterogeneous, narrative in the travel business, instead of coding luxury with certain points. I think this kind of narrative really adds to the element of variety, the element of innovation in the travel industry.
And have the Indians taken up to this so-called luxury that you are providing?
Yes, a lot of them, yes. We've been working very strongly with Responsible Tourism.
And how are they paying in terms of tariff as opposed to the foreigner, the Goras?
So not much of it. The thing is, we have to understand, I worked in the domestic travel business. In my initial years were in the domestic travel business, and it's a value-driven market.
It is, sorry?
It's a value-driven market. They do want to know that they're getting a good deal, however luxurious they might be, unless, of course, the secretary is booking and, she kind of passes through. But they do want to know that there is, that they're paying for what they are getting, and if it's valuable. But they do spend a lot of money otherwise. The F&B, they will do F&B, they'll drink, they will put their entire clothes on laundry, they will extend their stay. They'll just suddenly stay, we'd like to stay for 2 more nights, So you have to, every market has its quirks, and Americans are not easy to deal with either, right? But you have to understand that this is the Indian way of doing business. And of course, and it's our low-hanging fruit. You have to invest in the psyche of the market. So I think having understood that, I mean, some of them like Ravi Ramathra, which is out and out inbound, they quickly turned their narrative around, ready to do anything. And
In
that
my
was very good.
earlier session, I was asking the question, is there danger that your owners may take up to the Indian traveler adequately to forget the foreign traveler? Because numbers don't compare. The size of the Indian market is so much, much more. And it's more dependable because it's coming from
So,
you know,
this
the
is
town next door.
I doubt if that is going to
Doubt
happen
that's gonna
because whether we like it or not, however much the Indians might fall in love with their backyard, the minute the boundaries are going to open, it is more aspirational to spend the summers in the south of France than it is to spend the summer in Munnar, right? So that is going to happen. Similarly, the inbound is also to come back. And it is also a mindset that you want, you want a variety of travelers to be coming in. The idea is to have a good travel and hospitality product. It's no longer about I'm making a hotel for a Gora. That is changing. The palate, the changing their food to become very bland, and that kind of stuff is. I've seen a lot of change in that.
Rohit, would you share with us the Indian accent experience in the last 1 year? And I also gather from various sources that you have quite a robust pipeline for Indian accent.
Yes.
And you are into this luxury space where, please just take us with you in terms of an average check. How does it work for Indian accent? I can't afford to go there. So you'll have to tell me.
Okay, no, I think I should maybe touch upon a tale of three cities. So Indian accent, New York has had huge spikes, closing, opening, closing, opening. But we were supported by a very good landlord, the hotel, who really reduced the rent. So we've kept it going. London, on the other hand, the landlord didn't step up. It was too small. So we had to take a decision to close it. And retrospectively, it was the wisest thing we did because we'd calculated we'd lose about $500,000. But when we speak to our friends, we would have lost maybe £1 million by now if we'd kept it going because London's been really, really down. And that's when I started signing up other Indian accents saying, okay, fine, we're closing one, let's open 3 more. Delhi, for staff and guests, security and safety, we only opened in October. But touch wood, at 50% occupancy, we're doing about 80% of the revenues in Indian accent. But that's not just luxury. Even our other restaurants have all bounced back. So whether it's Commodore in Gurgaon or Chor Bazaar in Bikaner House or the All-American Diner at Habitat. What hasn't really taken up, like somebody very astutely said, is corporate spending. So the conference center, the conferences at Habitat are low. So as you know, I run India Habitat Center. That's low, very low. And that's going to take a while, I think, to come back because it's corporate business is gone. Leisure is very good. But leisure, I think, not just luxury. I'm on the board of Club Mahindra. Even the Club Mahindra resorts, anything which is out and especially drivable, doing extremely well. But I think luxury dining is here to stay. If people will take a risk to step out and not order with Zomato or Swiggy or Easy Diner at home, then they want a blowout experience, and that is not going to go away. They want to actually go and have a meal that will be memorable. And then money is not the object. So I think that way we are fairly insulated as far as Indian accent is concerned. But as I mentioned, even all the other good restaurants are also doing well, but we were all devastated. First 6-8 months have been terrible for our industry. So.
What have you to say on this in terms of eating out? Is there a noticeable trend where deliveries have reduced and people have started stepping out?
So from our perspective, we're not really a delivery brand. We are an eating out brand. We moved to delivery during the pandemic when restaurants were not open because we already had the platform, we had the partnerships. And also we believe that the restaurant industry, whether in hotels or even outside hotels, needs to really evolve. Means you're paying 20% commissions, that's ridiculous actually, on food, because food cost is a very big percentage. So we kind of built a marketplace at 7% with payment gateway charges and said, discovery of customers can happen through us. Yeah, so that's what we did at Easy Diner. But 90% on eating out business is back as of January. We're seeing a slight dip now. It was 82% in March because of COVID cases going up. But we kind of aggregate 10,000 restaurants. Means Comrin is nearly full. Whenever we've queried, we kind of, so we got a great barometer on who's doing well and who's not doing well because we can aggregate, we can see data. So it's not hearsay, but yeah, business is back in a big way. And I believe once another 30, 45 days of vaccinations going ahead, I think you will see it'll cross 100%. Just to give you a very interesting number, close to 27% restaurants have not opened yet.
27.
27% restaurants. According to our universe, 27% restaurants have not opened yet, but the number of reservation per restaurant. So if you opened your restaurant, the number of reservations per restaurant which is open is 12% higher than it was pre-COVID. So just to give you an example, overall numbers, 90% back on eating out. Restaurants which are open, 12% higher. So if you got a restaurant, you can benchmark, 12% higher. On an aggregate of 10,000 restaurants. Okay, so that's what the numbers are.
And what about the ticket size?
Same, no difference. We see no difference at all on the ticket size. Really.
Is there a difference in the luxury segment or so-called the high-end eating or?
No, not really. I think people are stepping out. You're just being more careful when you're stepping out. And also, the bigger problems are different. The bigger problems are, let me give you a real example. So I'm sitting with the Citibank marketing head and they're saying, we need to move our credit card spends up, Kapil. So we said, okay. So he's saying, aisa karte hain. We've got 2.7 million credit card members. Yeah, Citibank has 27 lakh credit card members. Boss, you just go and eat out here. Go and eat out at Andaz tonight. Go and eat out at Indian Accent tonight. Go and eat out at Burger King tonight. If you eat out and your bill is over 1,500 rupees, we'll give you 500 rupees back. Unlimited, Kapil. So I said, what's the marketing budget? Saying 25 crores. Kharcho. Give 500 rupees back. Now, when you go to restaurants, and that's the big problem in our country too. When you go to restaurants, they're negotiating reservation fees. No, if it was 10 rupees lower, no, we would come in. And I'm saying, my guys are coming to me, Rohit and Sachin and everybody. And I'm saying, it's okay. It's an industry which does not understand intellectual capital. So here are every single bank in this country, Naveen, has earmarked 20 to 25 crores on putting credit card spends up. Deep is going to be in the room at next session. Please go to Make My Trip app. Now, this is where we all need to start thinking a bit intellectually. We're playing this 25 paisa, 50 paisa game. Forget about that. How is Citibank able to give you 10,000 rupees cash back on an international travel ticket when a Citibank credit card joining fees is 1,000 rupees? How? Why are hotels not using it? Why isn't Citibank coming to Andaz or any other hotel and saying, stay tonight at Andaz and I'm going to give you 2,000 bucks back? Can they do it? Of course they can do it. Has any hotel gone and asked? No. So they're not doing it. They also need an avenue for you to spend. I'm telling you, 25 crores is only my Citibank allocation. 25 crores is my IndusInd allocation. Okay? Direct. Unlimited. They're not stopping. They've been on since August. Every customer. So today I told my guys, I said, just check on Andaz. Do I have a Pay Easy enabled? Because they need to pay on the app. They need to identify I'm a Citibank customer. He's saying, yeah. So I'm going to buy pastries worth 1,500 rupees and pay 1,000 and walk out. The last 500 is paid by Citibank. So I think it's also important for hotels, for restaurants, to look at allied guys who you can win with. Yeah. So who else is very happy if your hotel gets filled up tonight? Who else is very happy if your restaurant gets filled up tonight? The credit card companies. They're very, very happy. You look at the fact that in the first week of COVID lockdown, SBI cards got listed. SBI card, State Bank of India credit card, got listed. What was the market cap? A lot of people, actually nobody in this room would know what was the market cap. If you know, I'll be very impressed. Yeah, but the market capitalization of SBI cards was 50,000 crores. That's how lucrative the credit card business is. So why are you not using those marketing dollars to fuel your thing? So today, when I run a hotel business at the Postcard Hotel, most of my business is direct because I work with the banks directly. Every single bank, Postcard is very expensive. Its average rates are around 26,000 rupees right now. 5,000 rupees is given by any credit card. Please go, Stand Chart, Citibank. Everybody's giving 5,000 rupees if you stay at the Postcard Hotel. How much? And I'm looking at City Hotel average room rates, 4,000, 3,000. Nobody's exploring. That's great for us. But the important thing is we all, if we need the industry to recover, I'm not just talking about luxury, non-luxury resort, city here. If we need the industry to recover, I think we need to innovate. I started Easy Diner not because I wanted to be a billionaire. I started Easy Diner because as president of Oberoi, I could not believe it that, one Wednesday morning I was taking a round of the Oberoi in Delhi and I asked the 360 manager and I said, how's it? He said, it's good, sir. It's good. Wednesdays are generally good in Delhi, because Tuesday everybody is vegetarian. And I said, we just come back winning the best hotel brand in the world. And I really thought, if this is the way we're going to run this industry, that's why hotel stocks are low on market cap. That's like a JB will ask and say, do I really need to put money into hotels? Because we're not really innovating enough. So we wanted to build a platform. And my logic was, if I can sell one table extra at the Oberoi, I would make 30 crores revenue extra. Just one table a day in a restaurant. I don't need to hire extra staff. I don't need to hire extra cook. I'd sell 30 crores extra. If I sell 3 tables, I'll add 100 crores and a 70 crore operating profit to my net profit that time, which was 110 crores. Selfish reason to open it.
Rohit, would you like to add something to that bit on the restaurant business?
Trying to figure out what to add. No, we've been slightly spoiled. Usually we don't have many tables, but there's been a bonfire of the vanities where suddenly everything collapsed. Luckily, as I said, Indian Accent was insulated. But yes, we've just started using, in fact, Easy Diner for the first time at Comarin with great results, which we've never used to use any aggregator earlier. Still haven't really understood the Zomato Swiggy game though. That's a very difficult algorithm to understand on how you can actually survive while giving 20% or 18% to aggregators to deliver. But that's another thing that one will have to learn. That's why I said bonfire of the vanities. We never used to deliver. Do 6,000 meals a day, but never delivered even one meal. So we're learning that and trying to get, agility, as you said, trying to understand how to do that business, because I think it's here to stay. People are, at least for the next year and a half, a lot of people will be worried. I'm very happy to hear a couple of figures about the restaurants, and I thought it was only our restaurant that were doing well. It seems that everybody is, which is great to hear. But people are also ordering a lot at home. So I think that's something which we'll have to wake up to as big, if not bigger than the restaurant industry itself.
Shobha, you were saying something a little while ago. You wanted to chip in? Am I right or no?
No, I'm not.
see, okay.
I don't know much.
Well, I'll move to my next question, which is my favorite, and I'm sure Mr. Chopra has been working on it for many years now. India is a luxury destination for overseas market. Do we really have a market for luxury? Where do you see it going? And can there be some kind of a roadmap for building a niche product like this is luxury India, experiential India? Where do you see that possibility happening?
So,
As a destination.
okay, so I'll again step back a bit. When I looked at business, so let me give you, because last panel again was very interesting because they're all leaders running great businesses. I'm like, I like watching trends on how people react to business. So first I will give you an example of how people react to business and then I'll answer your question. So Anil Chadda is in the room. I sent him a message 4 months back, okay? He did a very nice promotion. It was August, September, okay? Business had really come back, okay? And he did a very nice promotion where he said, you stay with us, you pay us 10,000 rupees and we'll give you a 10,000 rupees F&B credit, okay? But that was the first time I saw innovation come out of on a rate basis brand. Huh? Fantastic. Anil, if you remember, I sent you that message and, I got a response back from him. Generally, he doesn't respond to people like me, but did that day. Okay, just pulling his leg. Okay. Okay. And then, so I think, so from that perspective, what were they doing? They were embracing the domestic Indian market. Again, let me give you numbers, okay? 1.8 billion trips happen in India. A trip is classified as a bus ticket. I go from Delhi to Patna, trip. I take a flight from Delhi to Patna, trip. I take a train from Delhi to Patna, trip. Okay, so that's 1.8 billion trips. Now assume 99% of those trips, 1.8 billion trips which happen in India, 99% of the trips don't matter. They're all useless and they're not for your luxury market. But if even 1% of those trips are for the luxury market, that's 18 million Indians who are ready to actually come and stay with you. This was a part of my opening slide when I launched the Postcard Hotel, because I said, I suddenly realized that you need to make a brand from India which captures India and then moves out. One. How many inbound travel into India? 10 million, whenever it was. Right now it's nothing. Out of those 10 million, actually only 2 million is relevant. 2 million to 18 million relevance, India is a bigger market. Factor point 2 on luxury. When we opened the Oberoi Uday Villas, it had 8% Indian occupancy at an average room rate of 30s. That time, when it opened, it was 29,000. By the time I would quit in 2018, the Indian occupancy had gone from 8% to 52%. The rate had gone from 29,000 to 36,500. So Indians were paying. Wildflower Hall, 2013, all domestic occupancy, average room rate 9,000 rupees. By the time 2018, I can only give numbers till I quit. 2018, average room rate had gone up to 23,500. 98.2% Indian travelers. Only 1.8% foreign travelers. So the domestic luxury Indian traveler had arrived. That is why it was time for me to launch a new brand. So can India do a luxury brand? Of course it can. Yeah. Point number one. Let's look at experiential luxury hotel brands that I have admired. Okay, so I'm a big Oberoi fan. I ran the company for 5 years, so of course I'm a big Oberoi fan. I'm a fan of any new thing that I see or something that impresses me. I love the way ITC, what ITC has done with ITC Grand Bharat, how ITC has reimagined ITC Royal Bengal, just to give you an example, yeah? So our point was, in experiential luxury travel, which are the global companies that can be replicated? The answer was 3. Aman Resorts, Six Senses Resorts, and One and Only Resorts. Yeah, they changed the way the world holidays. So the other question to me was, what's the common factor between these 3 companies? These 3 are great companies, yeah? But what's the common factor? The common factor between these 3 companies is that the founders who built these great companies, Adrian Zeka, Sonu Shivdasani, Saul Kresner, the late Saul Kresner, actually all lost control of what they built because they were not financially diligent. And the answer again to that question on why they were not financially diligent is because they were built slightly ahead of time. So if I would have done Postcard 2012, I would have failed. Yeah, I did Postcard 2018, 19, 20, it's worked. Yeah, because the market had changed. So you sometimes when you go ahead of market, it's very difficult to survive. So you need to timing in a market is very, very important. So India was ready for luxury. Wildflower Hall, Uday Villas. I had a ringside view of the numbers. I could see, man, the world is changing. We are still building hotels in Rajasthan. It's not going to work. India needs to be embracing. People like Shobha were leading an alternative movement, okay, on luxury accommodation. Means the first time I met her, I told her, I said, I absolutely admire what you've done. Okay, because I came in much later. But they were the guys who were laying the roads of saying, boss, you've got to change the way you travel. You need to embrace experiential travel. And it was a very lonely road that Shobha was playing up with, yeah? And what we did was we institutionalized it. We kind of looked at it in a different way. We had the advantage of running a business, and we had the biggest advantage, which was time. So can India do a brand? So the whole idea of the Postcard Hotel was to build a financially diligent, highly profitable, uber luxury, high premium brand, which starts from India. And actually, like somebody said on the last panel, that most of the travel happens regional, first starts from South Asia. So we are doing Sri Lanka, we're doing Bhutan, we'll do Nepal very soon, okay? And we'll do Thailand, and we will start there, and then we're going to do Europe. So we're going to work in a very, very strategic way, but very quietly under the radar. Means nobody even knows what we're opening next month, but we will make an announcement very soon, opening reservations, yeah? But that's the way, but India's ready for luxury. There has never been a better time to build. I think the other thing that everybody needs to keep in mind is build properly, build diligently. Don't do a 400 crore hotel and expect to make money. Difficult. So look at financial logic when you're doing a hotel and it will work out very, very well. That's all I have to say. But it's ready, yeah. Great market.
That Shobha?
I mean, yeah, I mean, of course, there is so much potential for luxury in India. What I would add to what Kapil said is the privilege of luxury. There is no Ladakh anywhere else in India. There is no Central India jungles anywhere else in the world. To add to this pristine locations and put a luxury product in it, we are talking about a different ball game altogether. My sense, I mean, also where luxury is concerned, and I'm a big fan of Sonu Shivdasani, in the sense is that how do you strip luxury out of its frivolity? You know, strip it down to its basics of great location, pristine condition, bring wellness into it, you know, get you involved with your time and energy and resources, and then make it into a composite product, on top of it charge a lot of money. That is exactly where we are unable to. India has never been able to charge a lot of money for its luxury offerings, despite having destinations that can completely knock you out. You know, what we try and do to a place like Ladakh is to inundate it with Three Idiots kind of tourism and completely, you know, ruin the destination. It has no potential to, you know, retain its identity. And by the time you want to put a luxury product there, it's already labeled as a destination that is being inundated with domestic travelers. It's a destination that's already been inundated with so much garbage. Feral dogs are everywhere. Wildlife is hugely compromised. So the destination is gone. So thereafter, you can't start talking about luxury in those destinations. So that's the only thing I'd like to add to a luxury. The other thing about luxury is, and thank you, Kapil, for the acknowledgement. Not many people do. But the thing about experiential travel is not to, again, to homogenize it. Experience is what is experiential and what is typical to that particular destination. So a Murshidabad, like a Badi Koti in Murshidabad, has its own experience, right? And Atali Ganga on the Ganges has its own experience. So weaving experience which is very authentic and true to its destination, I think, is what's very important. What we generally do, we have this huge horde mentality and say, okay, we also do this. You know, you can do this here also, but you like taking Ayurveda to the mountains and try and do Ayurveda somewhere else. You cannot. We don't do enough R&D to create experiences that are very, very intrinsic to the local community.
Do you think there's a possibility that when we are building these properties, we are a little too scared that we may leave out one particular market? So therefore, when we are building the facilities, we want to say, एक family भी आ जाएगी, एक couple भी आ जाएगा, honeymoon पे आ रहा है तो उसमें एक कुर्सी भी लगा दो कोने में. So you don't want to miss out on any market and you want to cater to all.
We want to cater.
So you don't end up actually doing something exclusive and actually which is experiential for one kind of a guy.
Yeah, and stick to it and say, this is my price. If you want to come and stay in this place, this is what you should do. And also pay a premium for being in a destination like this. That is where I think luxury will really make sense in India.
One answer, Kapil, why Shobha says we not been able to have once, I mean, there may be an exception, that actually we've not built a market or a property where you can actually command the prices, say, which you get in the Maldives, for instance.
So
You've got everything going.
Yeah,
You have a 5,000 kilometer long coastline.
So that's what we are building. That's the opportunity. She's right. And that is what we also saw too. So at the postcard, why are we at 26,000 in Goa? None of our hotels in Goa are on the beach. So why are we commanding that price? Or in Bhutan, $1,000? Means we are a 2-year-old brand. So why are we able to get in? We are opening, I'll announce it now, but we're opening Gir. Our opening price is 22,000 rupees in Gir. Opening price, opening 16th April. So nobody's seen the Asiatic lion. If I ask how many people in this room have seen the Asiatic lion, then you'll be surprised. When I went to Gir for the first time, it was so clean, I was surprised myself. It's so clean, it's absolutely, I felt so proud seeing Gir. But 674 lions, just can't miss a sighting. But again, you haven't set up a circuit. Think about it, Naveen. You're sitting in Delhi. I want you to take a holiday in the mountains. Where can you get to in 1 hour? It's only Dharamshala. You're stuck. Can you get to Mussoorie in an hour? No. Can you get to Shimla in an hour? No. Where can you get to in an hour if you want to go to the hills? So I think it's all about, you've not, it's who came first, chicken and egg situation. So let's put up the hotels in destinations where people want to go. So our aim is that when you wake up in any city, in a key city in India or in South Asia, within 2 hours, we should be able to get you to multiple postcard hotels. Okay? All very high-end, all ultra-immersive, and of course expensive, because if smaller hotels are not expensive, they'll never be financially viable. So I think that's the case. But again, means, look at what Rohit does in terms of dining, really. I don't know if you've eaten at Comorin. We spoke about Comorin, but eat there, and not to say, because Rohit, you're on the panel, so I was very proud, and once you and I spoke about that restaurant Amaranta at the Oberoi. I've always been very proud of it. Commercially never worked. It's still my favorite restaurant ever. Out of the 90 restaurants I ran at Oberoi, my favorite restaurant, yeah. Commercially never worked. So Rohit and I once spoke about, why don't we turn around Amaranta? But when I went to Comorin, I thought Amaranta had been disrupted, because just go to Comorin, see the experience. For me, it's a phenomenally superlative experience with very, very high quality of food. So again, that's luxury too. That's phenomenally, why doesn't India have iconic restaurants to go to? Why should there be a Bukhara, an Indian accent only? Why doesn't India have iconic restaurants? Why aren't there 20 iconic restaurants in Delhi to eat at? There are bigger questions that we need to ask.
Rohit, something from you?
No, thanks, Kapil. No, actually, that's also one of our dilemmas. For example, people have been pushing us to open Comorin in Delhi, and there's so many fabulous sites that have been offered. But there's at least 8 to 10 tables every day from Delhi in Comorin. So will we cheapen it if we open Comorin in Delhi now? That's a question. Same logic with Indian accent. There's about 5 tables from Bombay every night. Manor, I had 14 rooms when I ran the Manor before we moved to Lodi. And there were so many nights, especially weekends, that everybody who came there actually came for the meal, and we sold the room. So I don't know how many rooms we're giving the Lodi right now. I haven't checked, because I don't run the Lodi. But coming back to experiential, I think anybody who wants a great experience wants a great dining experience too. The majority of our sales is actually with our tasting menu paired with wines, which takes you to over $100 in Delhi on Indian accent, which could be a meal anywhere. So people are willing to spend 7,000-8,000 rupees, and majority of them just go with the tasting menu, go with the tasting wines, paired wines, and want to have an experience. And I remember when we opened in New York, everybody said that Indian food, like Thai cuisine, is cheap food. They said, don't even think of $100. And there was no Indian restaurant that was doing even 80. We were at 140 pre-COVID. We've gone down slightly right now because we're at 25% occupancy. But $140 even in New York for Indian food. So if you do it well, I think people are willing to pay. There's no reason there shouldn't be more.
Well, thank you very much. We've run out of time, and I see our panelists for the next session already in. Thank you very much once again for being here with us. Yes.
Just one message I'd like to say to everybody is basically on innovation, really. I think these times, one of the biggest learnings from COVID is innovating. And the industry just needs to embrace that. I think that's extremely important. So I'll also very quickly, just shortly tell you about a great conversation with another hotel CEO here. Okay, and just a conversation. So I met Zubin from Radisson, yeah? And he says, what's the sweetmeats market in India, the mithai market in India, yeah? It's close to, how much is it, Zubin? 1 lakh crore market. But imagine, no hotel has monopolized that market. Yeah? So they launched Meetha by Radisson, okay? And they're trying to do that, okay? But nobody's looked at that. So one thing that COVID's really done for everybody, okay, we're not in that market, okay, but one thing that's for city hotels, and everybody's just doing the staycation and that 4,000 rupee rate and that 2,000 rupee rate, and actually destroying their own hotels by selling so cheap, because getting up rates in India is a different game altogether, but is innovating. ITC did gourmet couch, so you could get food from Bukhara and everything in. They did Meetha by Radisson. It's a 1 lakh crore market. Nobody owns it. Absolutely amazing. They're trying to own it right now, but what an idea. Yeah, so I think one of the key things for all of us really is to embrace innovation. COVID's really made us rethink that. You innovate well, you go after markets that are not taken, I think you'll do well. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.